Hi, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the next episode of the Bi-Weekly Grievance. I'm your host, Dan Allen. What?
The facts, dates, and events presented in this video are from the members' best recollection and may not be fully accurate. This video is intended for entertainment purposes only. Always consult with your local union about your rights and duties at your workplace. The opinions shared on this video are our own and do not necessarily represent my employer's positions, strategies, or opinions. All views shared are protected under the National Labor Relations Act.
Hey, brothers and sisters, welcome to the next episode of the Bi-Weekly Grievance. I'm your host, Dan Arlen. This week, I have a special guest out of Griffin, Georgia, local 728. She's a preloader, a steward, and an activist. And she's here to discuss with me the sentiment that came across my Facebook page. And I reached out to her to see if she would help me discuss this. But first of all, Jess, if you could just give us a little background on yourself, I'd appreciate it.
Hey, yes. So I'm from the area of Griffin, but I actually started out in Denver. I worked out there about a year and a half, and I transferred back home to Griffin. I've been in Griffin for a little over 4 years and been a steward almost 4 years.
Excellent. Now, I actually would like to thank you. I actually did not know Jess, and she became aware of my story over this last year. And all of a sudden, I was made aware that this very nice person down in Georgia went to a Martin Luther King march and displayed a sign of support for me, and even was kind enough to position herself behind Sean O'Brien with the sign. So I got a nice little picture with Sean O'Brien and a support sign for me behind him. That was very nice. And my understanding is you had a little interaction with Sean when he was trying to leave that march. You care to share that?
Yeah. So I actually didn't know that he was going to leave about halfway through. And they were kind of like, we got to head back to Boston. We're out of here. And they turned down a side street. And the idea was that I was going to bring your name up to him, show him the sign at the end of the march. And he turns down the side street, and Yvette and David, they both encouraged me. And they're like, if you're going to say something, the time is now. And I was like, okay. So I run down the street and I stop him. And, I say, hey, President O'Brien, show him the sign. I say, have you heard about this guy? And he said that he hadn't heard about you. I told him a little bit about what was going on with you. And Higdon knew a little bit he had heard about the story. And they kind of started talking about it. And I thanked him for his time. And they went on, and I ran on back to the march.
Well, I want you to know that that was very nice of you. I appreciate that. He did take your words to heart, because I have inside information that he reached out to your local for my information, because you had probably mentioned to him that I was on the Roswell hub with Dave, and they definitely knew. And what was really touching with all that also was this past Sunday, when they had the kickoff rally in Boston for the international, for the contract kickoff rally they had in Boston, I walked up to Sean and Fred afterwards when they were greeting everybody and shaking hands and taking pictures. And Fred, I didn't expect him to recognize me or anything. And I had only met him once before at the TDU conference in Chicago. And as I walked up to Fred said to me, he goes, hey, how you doing? It was really nice to see you. He goes, are you back to work? Is everything good now? And it was funny that, that in my Browns at a rally that, you know, he remembered me to the point where he made it a point to let me know and to ask how I was doing. So that was very nice. And I think a lot of that has to do with you. And I am greatly appreciative of your efforts. That was very nice of you.
I think that's awesome. It's funny that you mentioned Fred because it was a debate or a speech that I listened to from Fred Zuckerman that kind of solidified that was the slate I was going to be voting for.
Well, I truly believe Fred and Sean care about the members way more than we've been represented in the past. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was on my Facebook post about the rally, Damian Ledford out of, I don't know what local he's from, I apologize. But he stated, "We will see. I've heard this for 20 years, and we get concessionary contracts every time. While our committee members and CEOs give themselves good pay bumps and stay above the cost of living spikes. Lost 10% in insurance coverage since I've been a member. Wages for vested members not keeping up with inflation. No vested member should lose purchasing power while the company sets record profits years in a row. So I won't hold my breath." So my overall take on that was that based upon his career with the company and previous contracts, he doesn't have a lot of faith that we're going to see progress for the part-timers in this contract. And I think overall there's a large sentiment across the country that contracts are mostly about drivers. So as a part-time person and directly affected by these comments, if you could just share with me your thoughts and your perspective and your overall impression of the way the part-timers see these negotiations.
I think the longer term part-timers, I think they're the most bitter. And I get where they're coming from. Everything they're saying, we all see it on a daily basis from this company. The difference is part-timers, they have a supervisor up under them their whole entire shift. They're treated the worst, paid the worst, usually the most unsafe conditions. And I've been dealing with it for almost 6 years. I can only imagine how I would feel if it had been more of the same for 8, 12, 14, 20 years. People believe history. They believe what they see.
Do you think that the part-time membership is aware of the difference in leadership style between the Hoffa administration and the O'Brien-Zuckerman administration?
I think that they believe that they are more militant, that they aren't company men, but I also think that they don't relate to a lot of the people at the E-board and the IBT. When these people in these suits come down, I see a lot of people that they want the member application, they want this signed and that signed, and becoming a member is great. I encourage everybody. I let everybody know the benefits, but I try to make sure that I connect with people. I want to know, what do you do here? What are your issues in your area? And I don't feel like there has been a lot of connection and engagement with the part-timers. And because they're not seeing that consistently, not just this last year, they want to see something.
Right.
They don't want to just hear us talking. They want to see something. And at this point, a lot of people are saying that they're not going to believe it until they get a solid contract.
I hear that.
I wish that they would believe in the solid contract and throw their hat in the ring and really get those boots on the ground to help us out. But I also understand where they're coming from. So I see it both ways. I decided that I wasn't going to be one of the ones that I'm waiting on my union to show me something. I decided that I was going to do everything I could from my position to try to make that happen. Instead of saying, you go do this or you go do that. Well, I knew we really needed everybody in the fight.
You know, in my heart, I truly believe that this is a different contract. I truly believe this is a once in a lifetime opportunity or once in a generational opportunity. You know, I like to think about, with my research of the 97 strike, is that a lot of our issues in 97 that made us go on strike surrounded the part-timers, and, you know, that they weren't getting livable wages and that they weren't getting enough opportunities to go full time. And we're exactly full circle. We're back to the same exact spot now where, you know, there's been graphs out there, and I'll post it on this when I edit it, that if the part-timers had kept up with inflation, they would be at $25 an hour. In further comments on that post that I talked to you about a minute ago, he seems to think that the part-timers are going to end up somewhere around $20.50. I don't believe that. Nobody knows what's going to come out of this, but all indications from the international, Sean and Fred and people negotiating the supplements and stuff, is that the part-timers need to be closer to that $25 mark instead of the $20 mark. I think 20 is probably the minimum, but I think that we're probably going to see a number closer to 25. That's what I truly believe. I think north of 23 for sure. I highly doubt we'll see something lower than that, although we won't know until it comes out. I definitely think that Sean and Fred aren't going to settle without that being a priority, as well as creating more full-time opportunities for those of you part-timers that want to go full-time. And I truly believe that, you know, under the Hoffa administration, for sure, he definitely made drivers and the full-timers a priority, and the part-timers definitely got slighted. And there was less focus on keeping them up with the proper pay amounts. And I just don't see that happening this time. I truly believe that the part-timers won't be left out of this. Every speech I've seen Sean, he talks about the part-timers. He talks about bringing them up to livable wages. He talks about the even catch-up raises for people with seniority. So I don't think the part-timers are going to be left out of it. You know, they talk about work safety, and they've been talking a lot about air conditioning in the trucks, but they've also been talking about making sure these hot boxes that you guys work in the middle of the night loading the trucks are cooled off as well. You know, those buildings cook all day long, and management's office got air conditioning, but the work areas are a sweat box, and it's just as dangerous as being in those buildings as it is in the back of the trucks with the humidity and the heat, especially in the southern states. So I think that this contract is such a big deal and so historical, and we've made such a big push for this contract that it really will set the legacy for Sean and Fred.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
And I truly believe that they are the leaders we've been looking for the last 25 years. I think that we were tired of Hoffa a long time ago, but we didn't really have an option. And after what Hoffa did to us in 2018 and overriding the members' vote and shoving the contract down our throat, I think that was his death sentence as far as being reelected, and probably why he retired. And it probably almost instantaneously solidified Sean and Fred's victory because we wanted more militancy. The other correlation I like to make between 97 and now is 97 strike and contract. We were under Ron Carey out of 804. And he was a very militant leader. he was a no concessions kind of person. And to be honest with you, I know members are based upon history of concessionary contracts, but with the record profits that UPS has made over the last, few years during the pandemic, I honestly don't believe that there will be any concessions in this contract. Sean and Fred have said it repeatedly. And just like in 97, I think we're all going to walk away from this and it's going to be a fantastic thing. Everybody needs to get on board. Everybody needs to be positive and stay motivated. These individuals that are skeptic, I encourage them, don't just take my word for it. Don't just take your word for it. They need to, listen to Sean's speeches, go to the TDU website and read up on stuff. Go to the international links and listen to him. I mean, that he doesn't leave the part-timers in the wind. So I truly believe that this will be different for you guys.
Right. If I can talk a little bit about the wage, I have seen and heard 2050 thrown around a few times now. There is a petition going around on Teamsters Mobilize, and I think that it should be the basement, and it would be $25 an hour starting, 75 cents a year on top of that for every year you've been there. That would put a 6-7 year part-timer around $30 an hour. And that's where they need to be. It's funny that I didn't start this petition. A friend of mine, Jennifer Hancock, get this started. But she, when I did the math and it came out, I think mine would be like $29.75. And over a year ago, I knew I could not survive long term on these kind of wages, even with, a second income. The wage itself, hourly wage, was just not okay. And I knew that I needed to be around $30 an hour to be able to continue with UPS, to stay and feel like I was getting paid fairly. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're about, is a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. We work, the preload is a grind. It's some of the most physical work that there is. And $30 an hour for a 5-6 year part-timer, that's fair. And I don't think that anything less than that is fair.
Well, I said this once before on a previous show that I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are 2 full-time preloads in the entire country, and they're both here in Massachusetts. There's a part-time preload where in my local in Springfield, and I believe there's one in Watertown. Those preloaders make the same rate as drivers.
Right.
And I don't understand it at all how part-timers doing the exact same job, granted for 4 hours instead of 8 hours, but to have that big of a disparity between, kissing minimum wage and making driver's rate is deplorable. I don't understand how that ever happened. I don't know how the Hoffa administration, even with their concessionary contracts, could overlook that. But I think you guys are going to be very pleasantly surprised. I do. And
I just want to say, I back our leadership 100%. But I also believe that, if you're really going to be a good person, that you also try to hold people accountable. So I can back them with everything I have, and I can also hold them accountable to do what they say they're going to do. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So,
Well, I think the part-timers need to have faith. I truly believe, and I would never, I don't sugarcoat things, but I truly believe you guys are going to be happy with this contract. Will it be the stars and the moons? I don't know. I mean, it's going to take more than one contract to undo the harm that Hoffa did to the part-timers.
I agree.
But I think there's going to be a considerable bump. I think it'll be enough to make people happy. Will 10 people to the moon? I hope so. But like I said, I truly believe you guys will be north of 25 or close to it. I do not see 2050 as a number. I don't know why that number is floating around. I mean, that's probably the absolute basement of a number, but I don't believe it to be the number. So I wouldn't really concentrate on that too much because I don't believe that to be true. But hang in there, part-timers. Beat the drum. Take Jess an example. Get out there. Make sure the company knows you're organized. Get ready for a strike. Nobody wants a strike, but if we're not prepared, the company sees that. So, be ready, be prepared, and let's kick some ass, huh?
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, Jess, I appreciate your time. You're a great teamster, and you're a good example as a teamster as well as a leading advocate for your local and for the women of the Teamsters. And again, I appreciate your support. You didn't even know me, and you reached out and you did some stuff for me that was above and beyond, and I'm grateful for that.
I was making my signs. I was like, I know something I can do.
Well, that's fantastic. And you know what?
When you get paid very low, you have to be very resourceful.
Well, I hope the part-timers get their due because nobody should be scraping the bottom of the barrel to make a living doing the type of grueling work that part-timers do, especially on preload and local sort. Unbelievable. But I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on, and I'm sure we'll chat again.
Yes, thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Hey, brothers and sisters, just a couple more quick notes before I wrap up this episode. This Saturday, Southern California is going to have a rally on April 15th at noon, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sean O'Brien's going to be there only 2 days before they're supposed to start national negotiations. Check that out. TDU is now on YouTube. Check that out. All their recent seminars and informational stuff that they've done for the Teamsters is on there. A lot of good information. Roswell Hub this week had a good episode about contract negotiations and the lack thereof. 16 supplements are close to or are done. Don't forget to update and download the UPS Teamster app. Every time you open it, hit that little circle with the arrow to make sure you have the most current information. It'll download the new information for you. Props to Cisco on their first contract, and welcome aboard the Teamsters. You guys deserve it. Many good days ahead, solidarity. And the last quick thing I want to go over, guys, especially you drivers that get the dyad trainings, UPS is pushing their propaganda, and they have now tried to ask the drivers to push it for them, and I highly encourage you to stay away from it. During the dyad training, they said if we heard anything about competitors coming in or customers' concern about a possibility of a strike, I'm going to say about two things about that. One, do yourself a favor and don't talk about the contract negotiations with customers. For two reasons. One, if you talk about it from the union side of it, how negative things are going, how we're most likely going to go on strike, you can bet your butt that the company is going to, if they get wind of it, is going to fire you for stealing time talking about union stuff to customers on the clock. Don't do it. I highly encourage you to stay away from it. Second of all, in the dyad training, it suggests that you point the customers to a UPS page that has unicorns and rainbows and talks about how great the negotiations are going. And it's misleading and it's false. And I highly encourage you to not participate. Here is the website. And as you can see, everyone's smiling. Things are how great they are. They say how part-time employees raise glasses to community and power a punk. UPS has been really good to me. Opportunities at every turn. It's just absolute nonsense. It's not even close to being the truth. Carol Tomei and her delusional thoughts of we're not that far apart. Please stay away from this, guys. Don't get caught talking about the negative side on the clock. But on the other hand, too, there's no obligation by us union members to push the propaganda that the company is trying to portray to their investors and the public that we're so close to a contract. With that, guys, I leave you with a member who reached out to me to tell me that in lieu of a contract, in lieu of a pay raise, what the company has done for him.
What has your company given you instead of a raise?
A fucking headache, depression, anxiety, the need to chain smoke, the need to fucking drink to be able to come back and deal with these motherfuckers the next day. God damn!